Welcome, Johan, to Digital Innovation in Sports.
Thanks, Jonas.
It will be. We're looking forward for a presentation on the company RaceID and your growth journey. So, Johan, before you get started, tell us a bit about who you are and your experiences in the domain.
Yes, of course. So my name is Johan Jakobsson. I'm born here in Stockholm, Sweden. If we go back a little bit, I've studied business, and then I worked 15 years in sales and business development roles. But I felt somewhere that I were an entrepreneur at heart, and I wanted to start something on my own, and I want to do it in a field that is this is my passion, and endurance sports is my biggest passion. So it was like about 7 years ago, I was one of the 3 founders of RaceID.com, and it's a digital platform for participants and organizers in endurance races. And in this presentation, I will focus on how we managed to grow from 1 to 40 countries in 3 years. And then I think then Jonas will have some follow-up questions, but we will mainly focus on that in the presentation.
This sounds great. I'm really looking forward for the story.
Yeah. So as all companies, you have to start somewhere, and this is day 1. So now we are in August 2017. I have just quitted my day job with well paid and a lot of security to jump into this total uncertainty and no salary at all. And here in the picture here, I found my old study desk from when I studied business, and I'm about to move it to our first office because we couldn't afford to have to buy office desk to the office. And this is day 2. Now we moved in the desk into our office. We moved into a barn out in the forest together with a couple of other training companies, sport companies. And what we've done at this point, when we still were working, was that we worked on a first version of the product for a year or so in the evenings and the weekends. So actually have had something to bring to the market. It was really like a first version, but we at least had come that far. And the big advantage of that was that once we had quitted our day jobs and were working full time, we could start to sell immediately because we had at least something to sell. But the product was like really a first version, and all our competitors were superior to our product. So the question is, what do you do when you have a product that is not as good as your competitors? What we did is that we focused, instead of focus on selling product features, we focusing on communicating a vision. Where do we want to go with the company? In our case, it was building a community for participants in endurance races, and it worked really well, especially for customers. In our case, it was organizers of endurance races that are what we call early adapters, like people that are really open for new ideas. They really like being part of a journey and towards like a big goal in the future. And another advantage of bringing on those kind of customers in the beginning is that when things go wrong, which it did, they are generally really understanding. The customers you might miss when you choose this path is like the laggards, like the people that still think like a fax machine is like a fantastic innovation. But I don't think that really matters in the beginning, because these kind of customers are really the ones that are really want to have a safe solution, and when things go wrong, they are like not understanding at all. So that's what we did, and I think it was a good start.
Just a question here,
Johan.
Yeah. When you say who were a typical customer in these early days
So the platform, our business model, is that we sell it to organizers of endurance races. So we had like everything that you needed to organize a race. So that's like timekeeping, registration, payment solutions. And we generally started with smaller races between like maybe 500 and 1,000 participants. So we sold them to the organizer of the race, and then when they open registration to the race, people start to sign up, and then they became member of the platform. So it was like I don't know if you call it like B2B2C solution. So we got the end, like the end consumers, like the participants in the races as members in the community, but we did it through the organizers of the races.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks.
And now we're in day 72, so that's like 3 months in. And this is a picture of Scott Cole, who was the organizer of Or Extreme Challenge. That's like a big adventure racing team up in Åre, in north of Sweden. And at this was like an important turning point or like decision point in the company already 3 months in, because at that point we had these small races that we talked about as customers. We had actually managed to sell a few, but then this potential big race came in as an opportunity. They were like one of the biggest adventure races in the world. They had participants from all continents all over the world, and they demanded like so many features that we didn't have, like support for different languages, different payment solutions, etc. And so that was like a big question for us. What should we do? And then I turned. So I was mainly doing the sales in the company, and then our second founder, Niklas, to the left in that picture, he was the CTO. So I turned to him and asked like, what should we do? This is like something really big step for where we are right now. But he was very supportive, and he has like a mindset where you can hear words like growth mindset. He's really open to grow, and he didn't see like a big problem that we had to develop all these new features. So with that in mind, it was like a big support to me in the sales role. Like, okay, I think we actually can deliver this. We sold it to Or Extreme Challenge and Scott, and they opened registration that same fall across the whole world. I think we had registrations across all continents. And there was a lot of bugs in the system, but we managed to have everything under control. And also what happened there, like a big change in the development after we onboarded the Or Extreme Challenge, was that from up to that point we had developed features in the system that we guessed would be that the market wanted, but when they came in, they had so many demands, that were required in the system, that we started to develop a system that actually the customers wanted. In this case, Or Extreme Challenge, but they were like most all other races in the world. So with the features they wanted, they also other races wanted. So then we started to develop the platform together with the customers instead, which I think it was a good thing.
But is it a challenge to get too focused on one big customer versus serving the rest of the customers? Or how did you balance that?
I mean, at this point in the company, when this was still 3 months in, we didn't have too much choice.
Yeah.
We were so focused on delivering to Or Extreme Challenge, and I think he was reasonable in demand. There was like I think it could be a challenge if it could have been a challenge if we would be in a race that had like demands that required things that would be specific for that race. But the demands he had were like generally things that all races needed. But if we move forward, if I would answer the question 3 years later, that was like a big challenge, because then we have thousands of requirements.
Okay.
when
Let's
we had
return to that.
we can return to that later. So but at this point I think it was luck, also a bit of luck, because I think it could have been a challenge if it would have been like he required like a specific or extreme solution, but it didn't do that. It was like just, our solution at this point was a lot to do, still to do. So the requirements was just quite basic, to be honest. Yes. Did that answer your question, Jonas?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so if we move forward now, so now it's 1 year in since we launched the platform, and this is the day before our extreme challenge. So they opened registration in November the year before, and now we're in June 2018. And this is Eric, our third founder in the picture there. We're up in Åre now. And at this point, we still didn't have a back office system for the organizers. So the participants could register on the platform, pay and everything. But when the organizer wanted to change to the registration, it happened all the time. Like, do you want to change like the mailing address to a participant or the bib? It didn't exist any system for them to do that. So we had to be the back office system. So at this point, I think we had like maybe a couple of hundred of organizers, and so we were pretty much swamped doing all these changes. That's exactly what Eric is doing here, and it was also meant that we had to be on site for many races. So we were at personally, between three of us, we were at races every weekend because we didn't have a system good enough to organize and handle themselves. We also had developed like a basic timing keeping solution, mainly for smaller races. And we know that this would have been this was a too big race for this timing solution. But we wanted them, so we really wanted them on the platform. So our solution to that was to bring all our friends up to Åre instead and manually handle everything. So that's the picture in the middle there, and on the left. So we were like, I think we were 10-15 friends that came up and helped us, which was of course really good. But still, the night before, we found bugs in the system. So with the timekeeping, and if you've done an endurance race, you know that the timing is quite vital. You want to have the timing right when you do a race. And the day after, it was like a fantastic day up in the valley of Åre. So the race is that you start up in the river, and then you do paddling down to Åre, to the village, and then you run over the mountain Åreskutan, and then you switch to mountain bike into square in Åre. And I think the level of stress I had that day, I think it's the biggest I had in all my life. Like this felt so. It was like big for the company, and then on top of that, like having this timing system that was not sophisticated enough, and really felt like we need to deliver. And we had like the world champion in adventure racing participating. So in this small niche, it was like a really big event. But somehow we managed to solve. It was still bugs during the day and problems, but we managed to solve it somehow. And I think part of it was also that we had developed like a really good relationship with the race organization, so they were really understanding. So in the evening there, we had actually delivered most of the things we promised, I would say. And what we then communicated out to the world was, of course, not this, but rather this. And that was like a big stepping stone for what was coming next. So if we move on, so this is in day 375, which is like the fall 1 year after we launched. We were still only 3 founders working and the development team. I was doing the sales, and I was also the CEO of the company, which meant that the sales was, we always could do more. And then we took the decision to hire another salesperson, which was like a big step and risk for us, because at this point we were still not taking up the salary of the company. So the first person actually in Sweden that took salary was Max, and he was race organizer himself, and he was working with marketing at ICA, one of the bigger grocery chains here in Sweden. And I think it was what was really important with like the first employee here that made it really work well was that Max. I don't think I maybe felt it, but I didn't know it then. But he was or is like very entrepreneurial at heart. Like he was willing to take risks. It was no problem. We didn't have any structure. One example was that before, when we had hired him, but before he hadn't started, we were like in a dispute with we had like a outsourced part of the IT platform outsourced to Belarus, and we were in a dispute. And then they put in like we didn't think they had delivered enough. And then they put in some kind of Trojan horse into the system. So on the platform that all the participants and organizers could see this, it was like on a Saturday when I woke up, it was like they put a message all over the landing platform that said like, Johan, you are a dishonest person. And
crisis. Is it could be a reputation crisis coming up?
Yeah, exactly. That was yeah. I mean, some organizers saw it, and Max called me, and I understand. I explained to him what happened. Like we were in discussion, and we didn't feel like it was right, and then they, they took it to this level. But he stayed. Or he didn't, he had this, very safe job at, a big company in Sweden, but he still wanted to jump, even though this, I can just imagine what he went through his minds.
Yeah. But just a question regarding the development team. So you had the development team in another country, basically. Did you have your own developers? Anyone who were a developer in your team?
So Niklas, one of the founders, he had like a tech background.
Okay.
So our idea from the beginning was that he would do the development himself. Very cost effective, because we didn't take any salary, none of us, free. But then the whole idea and scope, as we kept onboarding customers, became too big, so he became like a project leader instead. And then the most cost efficient that we didn't have much money at all, so then the most but that's another discussion we could have if you want to. Like, was a lot of challenges to have like a tech team in Belarus and Ukraine as well. So it maybe feels cheap, but in the end, I'm not sure it was cheap. When you see the end results but it's a lot of but if you go back to Max, he started in August, and then, as it turned out, he was a real superstar. And now we are in May, almost 2 years after we launched, and he had started a conversation with Extra World Tour, which is a group of races in adventure, in extreme triathlon, which is like triathlon in the nature all over the world. And we managed to close the deal with them, and it was a little bit the same turning point as it was with our Extreme Challenge, because at this point we had participants from all over the world, but we only had races organized in Sweden. But now with Extra World Tour, there was like races in 10 countries across 4 continents. So that was, a lot of new challenges for us. Like, what do you do with I talked to our bank in Sweden, and it's like one of the races were organized in Brazil, like was like money laundering questions. and was like hundreds of those, like what to do. But since we managed to handle it, or extreme challenge, we felt like, okay, let's do this. And we launched that same fall, which meant that we went from, going from a Swedish platform to I would say a global platform, with only one customer. And what that meant was that we became like a global market leader within that field. If I group like adventure racing, races, which include like trail running races as well, when you run in the forest, open water races, swim run, that's kind of the same group of people doing that. And we built like knowledge, we built a lot of new functionality for that group of races, and we also built our network. And what that meant was that also, since it's a similar group of people, it could be like a participant that the race set for a Norseman that goes in the fjords in Norway and he travels from Australia and do the race, and then signing up to race through RaceID, and then he goes back to Australia and organizing a trail running race himself. And even though we were not present at all in Australia, we were still top of mind for him, since he used to race in Norway. So through that kind of network effect, we went from we managed to grow to 40 countries at the end of this is 3 years later. Then we had over 1,000 races across the whole, almost the whole world.
Super impressive. But how did you manage customer support to the race organizers around the globe? Was it only, in very asynchronous way, or did you have like a call center, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error to do first, but it was in the beginning, it was myself, because I was the person that was handling, I was everything for the race organizers. I sold it and delivered it, and then Max was on board, and then it was me and Max. And then I think maybe at this point, or if it was a little bit late, I think we hired like a support person, because the support for me and Max, we became, especially when it was like peak, a lot of generally like the summer months, May, June, August, September, when there was a lot of races organized. Then me and Max was pretty much more support persons than sales persons, which of course affected the new sales. If we only could, taking care of the existing races, which is really important as well, of course. But generally, I don't know. Maybe you could probably have thought through things more, but it's also hard to plan. When we launched the company, we were called Race.se, and then 3 years later we were in all over the world. We didn't imagine that. It was not in our plan. So it was a lot of like, okay, day to day, how do we solve this, rather than having like a big plan for everything. And to sum this up, if we take 4 key lessons, the first thing I would recommend is to start selling early. Because then you get this feedback right away. Is your product good enough to fit for the customers? And if it is, then you, as we did, can start to develop it together with the customer, or you need to go back to the drawing board. And when you start, your product won't be as good as your customers probably, but it works really well to sell through a vision. I've done it in other contexts as well, in larger companies, and I think that it's a much more fun way, and I think it generally works really well to sell where we're going, rather than specific product features. And the second lesson, I think, is, especially if you are in this situation that you want to grow and you want to grow fast, is that you need a tech team on board that really are on board on that journey. I work with other tech teams as well in more stable conditions where they more see, customers as something, that take away their focus, and then that wouldn't work in this case, because then would have been stuck, and we wouldn't been able to grow this fast. And then I think in the beginning of new companies, I think the first employees are of course super important, and I think the main characteristic is, try to find the entrepreneurs at yourself, because so many things will happen in the beginning that if they're not open for that, it won't work. And finally, I think a good sales strategy, or like the product development strategy, is to, rather than aiming for taking over the whole world, try to identify like a niche of the market and try to be a big player in that instead. Then you can kind of carve in your, your market, and then you can grow from there.
But what was the reaction from the established players, timing companies, and those who perhaps do those racing bibs and so on? Did they try to push into and be a competitor, or what was their reaction?
Yeah, we came in as like a new player from, from an industry that's been doing the same things for a long time, I would say. So I mean, the timing keeping companies, they were not as positive. They were we kind of have to force our way in. So I think the way we entered the market was that we sold into the organizers, like War Extreme Challenge, and then they decided to go with us, and then the timing companies was forced to work with us. That's I think how it was beginning. And then as we were growing, then we had cooperations with most of the timing companies, but in the beginning it was tough.
Yeah. But did you have any collaborations with any actors that actually supported you and made your life a bit easier? We often talk about competitors, but also those who are supporting and cultivating and helping a startup is also important to identify. Did you have those, or?
Do you mean in this market, or in general?
In the market.
Like
in the market.
In the market. I mean, one of the aims I had all the time was to find a way to sell to like multiple races at the same time, because the general, like the revenue, the average revenue per race for us was like about €1,000. So it was a lot of small races, which meant like the sales cost was quite high for onboarding every race. So I was trying to find a way through partnerships or manage to sell to multiple races at the same time, but it was tough. I mean, what I think the biggest supporters we had, there was like these early adapters. They really was on board. They recommended us to their friends in the community, and then we got recommendations. But the other players, there were. I really like the idea of supporting each other, but I would say it was quite tough to. I think they saw us as a competitor that were coming in here and trying to change things around, which was not super positive.
Yeah. Cool. And what was the reactions from the Swedish athlete community? Svensk idrottsrörelse, you are a rising star, you are changing or improving the way how things have been. Did you get support, or how was it?
I met with, I think, almost all of the. I think I met with all of the federations, and my general feeling was like they were a little bit. It was like coming to like the governmental side of Sweden. where
Okay.
a lot of beer, they've done things for a certain way in a long time, and here we were coming in, trying to change things around, and maybe we're doing things fast, and a lot of new ideas. So generally, there was one I really wanted to try to go that way as well, to help them, but that was a tough way to go forward with. I mean, the way that worked the best, there was this, what I talked about before, the early adapters that was open for new ideas, and generally I didn't find them in that side of the endurance racing community. It was rather more like entrepreneurs that were doing a race as well, or that kind of people that were, and maybe, I don't know, maybe also that's part of working at the federation. Maybe it's that their place, I don't know.
We have different roles and different logics and so on.
Of course it's like if you're looking for safety and everything is gonna work 100% all time, especially in the beginning, maybe we were not the right like platform to work with, so maybe it makes sense.
But it's impressive the time here in such a short time, getting something working and then scale at this speed. But then Corona happened. So can you just briefly mention what happened during the Corona and the restart of everything after Corona?
Yeah, that was of course really tough. I think we had like during that fall 2019, we had like new sales, like we topped our sales week by week that whole fall, and then Corona came, I think in February, March, at least in Sweden, the year after, and then everything just died. No races were organized, and since our business model is that we take a commission of the registration fee, so if no races are organized, then we don't earn any money at all. So what we did was we decided to, we're not going to lay down and think the word is not give up. So we started to focus on like the virtual races. To change the platform. So we actually had a lot of virtual races organized during that time, and then we had investors that supported us as well. But that of course that was tough, and it was 2 years, I think. I think we were a little bit lucky that at that point we had come quite far. So we were already in, I think, this journey that we talked about now, that all happened before Corona. So, but if we would have been in the beginning of that journey, I think that would have been really tough for the company to survive, because the whole, even though we developed everything for virtual races and sold in a lot of virtuals, it was like a lot smaller than physical, like normal races.
Great. Yeah. I'd say, as I said, impressive journey, great story to listen to here. It's Do you have any more input you'd like to give to us before we wrap up?
No, I think if you talk just entrepreneurship in general, I think I had a lot of people coming to me the last couple of years and trying to give advice as best as I can. But I think the biggest step to come over, and I think it's the most important step, is just to start. Because a lot of people are like, they're kind of stuck in their day job, and it's really hard to imagine quitting, but just start and doing something. It doesn't have to be that you quit your day job totally, but it could just be, have a meeting or email 3 people in your network that might can come a little closer, and once you start that, it generate something new, and then you come a little bit a little bit further ahead, and then once you've done that, you know, it keeps growing. But a lot of people, it gets stuck before you come that far. So that would be my yeah, to start somewhere.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much, Johan. It's been really fascinating, and I'm very happy that you have been with us here in the course and providing this story. And I wish you good luck with your future adventures. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see you in some fascinating projects in the future. But thank you so much, Johan.
Thanks, Jonas.